most students hate group work, but if you isolate why they hate group work, it's a bunch of things that happen outside the classroom. Work styles, work timing, free riding, toxic relationships. If all the group work's happening in the class, well, then that is something I can monitor. I use team-based learning because it fits with learning science, but also because the field of planning is inherently collaborative. You cannot divide and conquer a team-based activity, most of the ones I do. You have to come together and work on it. And you can't put it into pieces and then just stack them up. The team-based learning approach has a set of principles for developing a good in-class exercise. And there are things like the topic has to be relevant to students. All the teams in the classroom have to be working on the same problem. The team should report out simultaneously, so everybody's saying what they did. And they should have to make a specific choice. Because if you make it really open-ended, then they'll go in so many different places that it's hard to bring it back together as a discussion. But you don't want to make it so simple as an exercise that everybody just rips through it and there's nothing to discuss. So there's this art to trying to figure out something where they have to get it right, but then they still have discretion to have difference. This exercise asks us to think about what we should do in Lawrence if we want to create an urban form that is more accommodating for people that are experiencing homelessness, and wanted to do that by making sure on a land use standpoint there are places that have shade. In today's exercise, the students looked at some data. It's data I fabricated, but it could be real, and it was related to shade in parks, and the framing was around homelessness and heat waves, and trying to figure out, do we need to, in essence, increase spending and policy toward creating more spaces to be cool during the day for our most vulnerable citizens, or not? Do we have enough? So your task is to go through, look at that data, figure out whether we're meeting that 10% shade coverage, and then think about what the recommendation is for the city. And then make some visuals so that we could communicate to the public and decision makers more than just, hey, here's the number, but here's a visual that helps you understand that the recommendation we're making is the right one. All right? They do the mathematical calculations, and there's two ways to interpret it. There's the way that would cause low investment, and there's the way that would cause more investment, but is the more equitable one, and is actually mathematically more stable, because in this data set I purposely put some outliers. So I want to see them use the language of outliers. I want them to see them get the calculations correct.
What'd you find in terms of your calculations?
We're saying that the average is indicating that there are a bunch of outliers that are shifting the average, and the median and mode is.
I guess these are the.
Okay, so if you're going to come and present, and let's say that I really, for whatever reason, do not think that we should spend another penny on our parks, and actually my agenda is to cut money for parks. The average 14%. Mm-hmm. So you're either going to have to convince me, or if I'm obstinate, I'm not going to change my mind no matter what, then you need to convince others. So I want you to make a visual that we can share out in class.
Okay.
And then also the tool that they use, if in Excel, with the way that I structured the assignment, if you just kind of hit the make a chart button, it makes a chart that's not wrong, but it's really, really cluttered. And it's not as visually resonant as it could be. And it takes longer to get that right. It takes a lot of manipulation. Now, that is accurate into scale, but it does get kind of gross through here, right? Yeah. I mean, visually, like when you go to put in a title and do some of that stuff. So the students learn, like, hey, getting the right answer is part of the equation. But often it might take 2, 3, 5, 10 times as long to take something that you're able to understand pretty intuitively to be able to communicate it to the audience that you want in a way that's understandable and accurate. Tell us what you've done here.
Yeah, so just mapped out a bar graph and illustrated the target that we're shooting for of 10% shaded, and then shown the mean that is skewed to the right with that large bar of outliers at 100, and then shown the mode and the median missing the target to the left.
This would tell us a skeptic would see, oh yeah, there's 10 of these outliers that are 100%, they're throwing the whole thing off, the mean, the mode, the median, here's the target. Again, I'm not training statisticians. I'm training people who can call BS in numerical situations and who can take relatively simple calculations and communicate them clearly in a public domain. So this exercise was meant to communicate a couple different things. One is mean, median, and mode. It's important to look at each of them and looking at your distributions. Just because you can calculate the average doesn't mean that's the right answer. Often it will only take 5 or 10 minutes to get the right answer. It can take 2 or 3 times as long to figure out how to communicate the right answer. But if you just throw the right answer out there, people will not necessarily make the right decision with the right answer from a mathematical standpoint.